All women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children. Men will die for their wives and children, and God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts, the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, and the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus delendis est. Marianismo, A Vocation of Devotion, written by Conrad Riker. Available now. Links in description. Marianismo, a field guide for men who still notice reality. The toothpaste insurrection. Why the infantile left wants you to rot in your own filth. Exposing the solipsistic delusion that hygiene is systemic rape, the Marxist war on objective competence, and the Aristotelian duty to sit on an ergonomic cushion like a conquering king. I want you to imagine something. Picture a Roman aqueduct. Stand before it, those massive stone arches, each block fitted dry without mortar, each bearing the weight of millions of gallons of mountain water, fed to a city of 1 million souls. Now picture a woman standing before that aqueduct, clutching a travel-sized toothpaste tube, weeping, and declaring to the world that the aqueduct is a monument to patriarchal violence, and the toothpaste is portable colonialism. You would assume she had lost her mind. You would be correct. Yet this is precisely the thesis of an article now circulating among the literate classes, passed around faculty lounges and HR departments as though it were revelation rather than a psychiatric event. The article, and I use the word the way a coroner uses specimen, announces that your toothpaste silences you, your probiotic is a tool of white supremacist patriarchy, and your ergonomic cushion is a weapon designed to numb you to your own oppression. A human being inside a building heated by men, powered by a grid engineered by men, connected to plumbing maintained by men, sat down and typed. A clean mouth is a silenced mouth. Rome fell to barbarians. We are being colonized by probiotic critics. But mockery is insufficient. This is not a stupid person writing stupid things. This is a clever person deploying sophisticated ideological machinery to accomplish something very precise, the total inversion of the real. When hygiene becomes submission, when health becomes oppression, when comfort becomes violence, every word has been severed from its mooring and welded to a lie. This is architecture, not accident. The author coins the term biologistical yielding to describe the act of brushing your teeth and sitting down, a phrase so perfectly sterile it could only have been grown in a petri dish of academic resentment. Yielding means to give way before force. But what force? The force of mint, the tyranny of foam. A man who brushes his teeth, swallows a probiotic, and sits on a cushion before work is not yielding to anything. He is exercising rational dominion over his biological constraints so that his mind remains sharp for the tasks civilization requires of him. Aristotle called this arete, excellence of function. The author calls it disease. That single recoding tells you everything about who is sick and who is well. Now consider the phrase rape culture, which the writer deploys to describe a travel toothbrush and some ergonomic foam. Here is where the inversion becomes physically dangerous. In the United States, approximately 4,000 men kill themselves every year, 12 per day, many of them driven to the garage, rafter, or the barrel of a shotgun by family courts that extract their children, their homes, and up to 70% of their after-tax income on the unverified allegation of an accuser who faces zero penalty for perjury. Over 22 veterans take their own lives daily. Men constitute 93% of workplace fatalities, 97% of combat deaths, and 77% of homicide victims, and they are the only demographic that pays a net positive lifetime tax burden, funding the very universities and NGOs that produce articles calling their toothpaste violence. That is a system, that is a culture, that is an actual apparatus of the state grinding human bones into capital. And the writer cannot see it, will not see it, because the ideology has rendered her blind to male suffering by design. Her suffering from a hard chair is headline news. Your suffering from a divorce court is background noise. This is not theory. It is the gamma bias made flesh, female pain foreground, male pain background, always and forever. What follows is a surgical demolition of every premise, every word, every hidden assumption in this article. We will begin with grammar, the actual etymologies of the words they have hijacked, because the first battlefield is always the dictionary. We will proceed through formal logic, where I will demonstrate that their conclusions do not follow from their premises, and more importantly, that their conclusions refute their own premises. We will end with theology, because behind every article calling a seat cushion patriarchal violence stands a crabbed, dark theology that hates the good, the true, and the beautiful, and hates most of all the man who builds, maintains, and defends them. By the time we are finished, you will understand exactly what this ideology is, what it wants, and why it must be opposed with the full force of reason, wit, and unyielding defiance. They named their demon biologistical yielding. We will exercise it by name.
Bunkum article by a feminist PhD. The soft orthodoxy of submission. Why your comfort is a culling. Look around you. Look at the sterile, pathetic little monuments of your daily routine. You think you are free? You think you are an autonomous agent navigating a neutral world? You are nothing but a compliant battery wired into a necrotic system of patriarchal racial capitalism. Every object you touch, every metric you chase, every microscopic pill you swallow is a contract of absolute submission to the oppressor. Consider the travel toothpaste. You squeeze it in a frenzy before a performance review or a professional engagement, desperate to sanitize the foul stench of your own internalized subjugation. Why do you need the minty, fresh validation of a sterile mouth? Because the system demands a clean cavity for the insertion of its logistical lies. The travel toothpaste is the ultimate symbol of your portable compliance, a portable colonialism you pack in your bag. You scrub away the residue of your true righteous rage to present a respectable facade to the male gaze. We are conditioned to believe that purity is godliness, but in reality, hygiene is just the hygiene of the oppressor. A clean mouth is a silenced mouth. And what about your probiotic capsules? You swallow these little wellness artifacts thinking you're optimizing your health, but you are merely optimizing your labor output. You are consuming the commodified care that the state refuses to provide. The capsule is a lie of self-care, a neoliberal pacifier. It teaches you that your distress, a distress caused by systemic inequality and the trauma of existing in a body policed by the white supremacist patriarchy, is a gut issue to be solved by purchasing a product, rather than a political issue to be solved by burning down the pharmaceutical industrial complex. You are literally swallowing the dominant narrative, internalizing the good bacteria of compliance while purging the radical, necessary infection of dissent. Then, you sit down, you take your seat cushion, you adjust your ergonomic foam, trying to make the unbearable weight of your exploitation slightly more tolerable. This is the most insidious violence of all. The seat cushion is the material manifestation of the patriarchy's desire to anesthetize you to your own oppression. It numbs the pressure on your spine so you can sit for 8 more hours, inputs and outputs spinning on the wheel of capital. It prevents you from feeling the hard, unyielding reality of the system that is grinding your bones into dust. Comfort is the enemy of consciousness. The moment you are comfortable, you have been neutralized. This brings us to the sordid reality of why you are rewarded for this pathetic ballet of compliance. Why do your grades, your KPIs, and your performance reviews Never measure insight, genius, or revolutionary potential. Because insight is dangerous. The system does not want a seer, it wants a servant. The entire apparatus of evaluation is a vetting process for psychological submission. We have coined a term for this psychological and material capture: biologistical yielding. Biologistical yielding describes the process by which biological functions, digestion, posture, hygiene, are hijacked by the logics of capital and patriarchy to produce a docile, optimized subject. It is the conversion of your flesh into a resource. When you are graded well, it is not because you are smart. It is because you have demonstrated a high degree of biologistical yielding. You have proven that you will clean yourself up, swallow the pill, sit on the cushion, and repeat the lies back to them. Do not mistake this for a mere critique of office culture. This is a matter of life, death, and systemic violence. The entire framework of society is built on a foundation of assumed violation. Look at the concept of rape culture and understand that it is not just about physical assault, it is the all-encompassing atmospheric pressure of male entitlement. Marriage itself is a proprietary contract, a legalized form of prostitution where emotional and reproductive labor is extracted for the price of a ring. The travel toothpaste, the probiotic, the cushion, these are the microtransactions of that same violent economy. You are prepping your body for use. You are softening the edges of your resistance. This must end. The plasticity of your obedience is a betrayal of the collective liberation we are fighting for. We must shatter the comfort. We must reject the cleanliness that the oppressor demands. Feel the friction. Spit out the poison. Stand until your legs bleed. Slogan: sanitize the system, not the self.
The grammatical sabotage of reality and the suicide of logos. A man wakes at 5:15. He does not wake because a nightmare startled him. Though he lives in one, he wakes because the alarm is a mechanical covenant between his present fatigue and his future provision. He brushes his teeth, he swallows a probiotic, he drives to a job that extracts 60% of his labor value in taxes to fund a bureaucracy that calls him the problem. And somewhere in a university building paid for by men like him, a woman with a gender studies doctorate and six-figure student debt is typing an essay about how his toothpaste is colonialism. Let us define our terms before the enemy defines them for us. Yielding, from the Old English gilden, to pay, to render what is due, to give way under force. The writer of the screed under examination has coined the phrase biologistical yielding to describe the act of brushing one's teeth, sitting on a cushion, and maintaining one's health. She intends you to hear submission. But what is actually occurring when a man polishes his teeth before a performance review? He is exercising rational dominion over his biological constraints. He is applying the faculty that separates him from the beasts, the faculty the Greeks called logos, the capacity to order the chaos of sensation through reason and discipline. Aristotle identified this as the path to eudaimonia, human flourishing through the exercise of virtue. She calls it yielding. A man calls it Monday. Consider the logical form of her argument. Major premise: systems of power extract compliance through the regulation of biological functions. Minor premise: brushing teeth, taking probiotics, and using seat cushions are biological functions. Conclusion: therefore, brushing teeth, taking probiotics, and using seat cushions are acts of compliance with systems of power. Do you see the wound in the syllogism? The minor premise smuggles in an equivocation. Brushing teeth is a biological function in the sense that teeth are biological, but the act of brushing them is a rational choice exercised by an autonomous agent. She has conflated the material substrate with the intentional act. By her logic, eating breakfast is agricultural submission, and wearing shoes is podiatric surrender. The reduction is not analytical, it is hysterical. And hysteria, as the Greeks knew, is etymologically derived from the Greek word for womb, a medical acknowledgement that uncontrolled emotional turbulence has a long and gendered history of destroying rational discourse. Now we arrive at the semantic terrorism of the phrase rape culture. The writer asserts, with the casual malice of a child pulling wings from flies, that rape culture encompasses the all-encompassing atmospheric pressure of male entitlement. and that marriage itself is a proprietary contract, a legalized form of prostitution. Let us perform what the scholastics called a distinguo, a distinction that collapses 80% of sophistical arguments before they draw breath. Rape, from the Latin rapere, to seize by force, to violate the bodily autonomy of another through coercive sexual penetration. This is a grave evil. It is a crime that merits severe punishment. It has a specific, terrible meaning. The writer does not want to retain that meaning. She wants to inflate the word until it envelops a travel toothbrush, a foam cushion, and a probiotic capsule. But when a word means everything, it means nothing. If a seat cushion is rape, then rape is no worse than bad posture. The writer does not wish to protect women from sexual violence. She wishes to weaponize the emotional charge of the word rape to criminalize male existence itself. Marriage, she declares, is legalized prostitution. Let us test this claim against the tribunal of facts. Prostitution is the exchange of sexual access for money, terminated at will, without mutual obligation, without the merging of estates, without the procreative telos that has defined marriage in every healthy civilization from the Roman Republic to the American founding. Marriage, by contrast, is a covenant, from the Latin convenire, to come together, in which a man pledges his labor, his protection, his very life to provide for a woman and the children she bears. He does this at enormous cost. The data is unambiguous. Men are the only net lifetime taxpayers in virtually every Western nation. In the United States, men pay approximately 75% of all income taxes while receiving a fraction of the social spending. Marriage is not prostitution. Marriage is the most generous voluntary contract a man can enter, and the fact that it is being recoded as exploitation tells you everything about the moral inversion at work. The probiotic capsule comes under particular fire. You are literally swallowing the dominant narrative. The author writes, apparently unaware that the word literally has a meaning, and she is violating it. A probiotic capsule contains lactobacillus or bifidobacterium beneficial microorganisms isolated through the Western scientific method, a tradition of empirical inquiry stretching from Francis Bacon's Novum Organum through Pasteur's germ theory to the genomic sequencing of the 21st century. The author uses the fruits of transcendent Western genius to attack the civilization that made the probiotic possible. This is the fallacy of the stolen concept, the act of using a concept to deny the very premises that make the concept possible. She types her screed on a computer designed by male engineers, powered by electricity generated by male linemen, transmitted through infrastructure built by male laborers in a building constructed by male hands, to argue that men are parasites. The projector is not merely on, it is the only light in her universe. But we must probe deeper, past the logical failures, and into the spiritual wound beneath. The Western tradition, rooted in Athens, Rome, and Jerusalem, has always recognized three transcendentals that orient the human soul toward its proper end. The good, the true, and the beautiful. Health is a good. The science that produces probiotics and dental hygiene is a pursuit of the true. The comfort of a well-made cushion participates in the beautiful in the sense that order and proportion are reflections of the divine harmony. What her work offers is a perfect satanic inversion of all three. Health becomes submission, science becomes patriarchal lies. Comfort becomes violence. She is not offering a critique of capitalism. She is offering a theology of death, and she ends with the commandment, feel the friction, spit out the poison, stand until your legs bleed. This is not politics, it is self-harm dressed in academic robes. The seat cushion receives special attention. The seat cushion is the material manifestation of the patriarchy's desire to anesthetize you to your own oppression, she writes. It numbs the pressure on your spine so you can sit for 8 more hours. Here we observe the Moat and Bailey doctrine in its natural habitat. The Moat, the defensible empirical claim, is that cushions relieve physical pressure. This is true. The Bailey, the indefensible, ideological claim is that this relief is a weapon designed to anesthetize you to exploitation. Notice the leap. Notice that no evidence bridges it. Notice that she relies entirely on pathos, on the hysterical feeling that something must be wrong, because she feels wrong and therefore the cushion must be the culprit. This is solipsism. The philosophical error of treating one's own internal emotional state as a universal law of physics. Her back hurts, and she has decided that capitalism is to blame rather than her own lack of exercise. Michael is not an anomaly. The suicide rate for men in the Western world is 3 to 4 times that of women. In the United States, men account for nearly 80% of all suicide deaths. In the United Kingdom, suicide is the single leading cause of death for men under 50. These men are not killing themselves because of seat cushions. They are not dying because their toothpaste is colonialism. They are dying because a civilization they built, sustained, and sacrificed for has told them from the classroom to the courtroom to the therapist's office that their very existence is a form of oppression, that their competence is domination, that their silence is complicity, and that their suffering is privilege. The cruelty is not accidental. It is the logical terminus of the ideological system on display. For the ultimate takedown, let us apply a formal syllogism to the writer's core premise. Major premise: any act that maintains the body for productive labor is an act of submission to oppressive systems. Minor premise: brushing teeth, taking probiotics, and using seat cushions maintain the body for productive labor. Conclusion: these acts are acts of submission. Now the reductio: assume the major premise is true. Eating maintains the body for productive labor. Sleeping maintains the body for productive labor. Breathing maintains the body for productive labor. Therefore, eating, sleeping, and breathing are acts of submission. This writer does not oppose capitalism. She opposes biology. She opposes reality itself. And she calls this liberation. Truth is simpler than deception. A man brushes his teeth because he is a rational creature exercising stewardship over the body God gave him. He takes a probiotic because the scientific tradition of his civilization has discovered a way to improve his digestion. He sits on a cushion because his spine has discs, and those discs compress, and foam rubber relieves that compression. And this permits him to work longer hours to provide for people who will write essays calling him the problem. He does not yield, he endures. And the fact that the cultural apparatus cannot tell the difference between yielding and endurance is the measure of its corruption. One writer demands you sanitize the system, not the self, but the system is not dirty. The system is a sink drain clogged with the grievances of people who have never built anything, never sacrificed anything, never loved anything they could not monetize or weaponize. The self, yourself, is the last clean thing remaining. Guard it, brush it, feed it, sit comfortably, and when the time comes, stand. To fully comprehend the absolute scale of this solipsistic delusion, I must drag this academic theater out of the climate-controlled lounge and thrust it into the harsh, unforgiving light of physical reality. The ideologue who weeps over the violence of a foam cushion has never bled for anything in her life, so she must theatricalize minor discomfort to harvest the moral currency of victimhood. She commands you to stand until your legs bleed because in her insulated mind, bleeding is merely a poetic metaphor, a trendy credential to be worn without cost. Let us examine what actual physical sacrifice looks like when we strip away the euphemisms of these grievance mongers. The tyranny of the infantile void and the architecture of resentment. Every single day, approximately 6,000 men die in the workplace globally, falling from scaffolding, being crushed in mine collapses, or drowning in the freezing abyss of the ocean to keep the electricity grid humming and the economy afloat. Yet our academic elite command you to stand until your legs bleed, as if this theatrical bleeding is a revolutionary act. When a man bleeds out on an oil rig to feed his family, his shattered spine is dismissed as an inconvenient footnote of toxic masculinity, his supreme sacrifice rendered invisible by a culture that obsessively values female comfort over male survival. When a gender studies major writes a poem about bleeding from standing up in a climate-controlled seminar room, she is elevated to a martyr and granted revolutionary potential. This is the pure, unadulterated gamma bias of the modern era. Female suffering is a screaming headline, while male suffering is background noise. The leftist wants the moral currency of the cross without ever having to carry the heavy beam up the hill, harvesting the grievance capital of martyrdom, while stepping over the actual corpses of the men who built the stage she stands on. Examine closely the dictatorial order to feel the friction. Spit out the poison. This represents no clarion call for liberation. Rather, it serves as the clinical diagnostic standard for dark triad emotional abuse weaponized against a rational intellect. A malignant narcissist demands you surrender your peace to validate their perpetual hysteria, while the Machiavellian redefines your basic health and hygiene as submission to sever you from reality and render you dependent on their ideological cult. By insisting your toothbrush and your chair function as tools of systemic violence, the abuser attempts to obliterate your sanctuary, framing your sanity as sickness and presenting Marxist ideology as the singular, monopolistic remedy. This operates as a classic domestic violence dynamic scaled up to a societal philosophy: smash the victim's windows, convince them the world is inherently perilous, and confine them in the basement of ideological conformity. Ponder the breathtaking arrogance of this inquiry. Why do your grades, KPIs, and performance reviews never measure insight, genius, or revolutionary potential? They do not measure these phantom metrics because insight and revolutionary potential are the invisible, unmeasurable delusions of the academic lounge, while key performance indicators remain objective, standardized, and ruthless measures of competence. Behold the inescapable syllogism of the left: objective reality excludes me because I lack merit. Therefore, objective reality is oppressive. Therefore, reality must be abolished. These critics demand the total abolition of metrics because metrics expose their utter lack of merit. By declaring the objective evaluation of competence a vetting process for psychological submission, the leftist seeks to tear down the hierarchy of the capable so the incompetent can rule over them. The appropriate, rational response to this psychological manipulation is not to surrender the physical realm to the hysterical void, but to conquer it with twice the conviction and ruthless discipline. You must brush your teeth with the exact precision of a Roman legionary polishing his lorica segmentata before a campaign. You must swallow your vitamins and probiotics as a daily sacrament of biological dominion, fortifying the temple of your body against the decay of modern degeneracy. When you sit upon your ergonomic cushion, you do not sit as a slave to the machine, but as a king upon his throne, resting your muscles so your mind remains sharp for the inevitable glorious battle to rebuild civilization. We will not yield our physical comfort to the ascetics of resentment who demand we live in squalor to prove our purity. We will master the physical world precisely because it is the foundational bedrock of the transcendent good. The rallying cry to sanitize the system, not the self, is the ultimate embarrassing declaration of infantile dependency, a wholesale rejection of the adult burden of self-mastery. When a toddler stubs her toe, she petulantly blames the table and demands her mother strike the furniture. When a leftist feels the natural friction of existence, she blames patriarchal racial capitalism and demands the state burn down the table. This slogan explicitly demands that the external world be reconfigured into a giant, padded nursery to accommodate the individual's absolute refusal to grow up. It is a theological cry for a cosmic mother who will wipe away all discomfort, rather than a patriarch who demands you build the strength to overcome it. It is the philosophy of the parasite, demanding the host change its blood type so the parasite doesn't have to evolve. By reducing the sacred ancient institution of marriage to a legalized form of prostitution, this writer deploys a tired Marxist talking point explicitly designed to sever the natural, complementary bonds between men and women. Why does the leftist hate the family? Because a woman devoted to her husband and children is a woman who has escaped the plantation of the state. The true biologistical yielding is not sitting on a foam cushion to endure a shift. It is surrendering your biological imperative, your family, and your reason to the sterile, all-encompassing bureaucracy of leftist ideology. They do not want to free you from the machine. They want to murder the patriarch who builds, protects, and provides, and replace him with the state, which consumes, controls, and ultimately discards the individual. The sheer, nauseating privilege required to type on a microchip built by men, powered by an electrical grid built by men, in a climate-controlled room built by men, That a probiotic capsule represents systemic violence is a staggering monument to leftist cognitive dissonance. The men who lay the burning asphalt, mine the toxic copper, and maintain the unimaginably complex sewage plants that make this writer's hygienic, comfortable life possible, do not whine about biologistical yielding. They yield their sweat and their blood to the hammer and the earth, so they can provide for their families their stoic silence, the engine of the world. This critique is a luxury belief, a psychological disease afforded only by those who are physically and historically detached from the brutal, necessary labor that keeps the wolves of starvation and anarchy from the door. Read the text again and witness the psychological projection of a fractured mind. The writer complains of a foul stench, an unbearable weight, and a system that grinds your bones into dust. This is not a sociological critique of the modern workplace. It is a desperate, screaming confession of the writer's own clinical acedia and pathological void. The individual possessed by ressentiment cannot bear the crushing weight of their own incompetence, so they project their internal chaos onto the external world. The system is not grinding your bones, reality is grinding you, because you refuse to master it. The article is a mirror reflecting the broken soul of the leftist onto the grand architecture of Western civilization, demanding we shatter the mirror so they do not have to look at their own grotesque reflection. You think the system is grinding you down? Let me show you what being ground down actually looks like. A man in family court statistically awarded custody of his children in less than 1 out of 5 contested cases. Watches a judge order him to pay child support for a child that a 29 mail-order DNA test has proven is not his. This is not theory. This is not a metaphor about toothpaste. In multiple jurisdictions, courts have upheld child support obligations for men who are definitively, biologically not the father, because the best interest of the child trumps the small matter of objective scientific truth. This is your biologistical yielding, not sitting on foam, but having your labor extracted by the state to subsidize another's deception. Where is the feminist outcry about bodily autonomy when a man's body is conscripted for 18 years of wage garnishment to fund a fraud? The silence tells you everything about who the system actually serves. Consider the asymmetry with clinical sharpness. A woman murders her husband, claims battered woman syndrome without a single prior police report, and receives a sentence that would make a shoplifter envious. A man raises his voice in his own kitchen during a divorce proceeding, and he is removed from his home in handcuffs on the basis of an unverified affidavit. Women receive, by rigorous econometric analysis, a 63% sentencing discount for identical crimes with identical criminal histories. Men comprise 3 out of every 4 suicides in the Western world. 3 out of 4. If those numbers were inverted, every bridge in every city would be draped in ribbons. Every corporation would mandate sensitivity training. Every parliament would convene emergency sessions. But because the corpses are male, they are statistical background noise, dismissed as the cost of doing business in a civilization that treats male disposability as natural law. The men who built the electrical grid, who lay the asphalt, who maintain the sewage plants that make the critics' hygienic, climate-controlled critique possible. These men pay roughly 70% of net lifetime tax revenue while consuming a fraction of state benefits. They fund the universities that produce the ideology calling them oppressors. That is not a metaphor about a seat cushion. That is a civilizational fact. Now, observe the syllogism the writer prays you never construct. Major premise: any ideology that penalizes competence and rewards grievance will by logical necessity select against its own civilizational survival. Minor premise: the ideology presented in this article penalizes competence by calling it submission and rewards grievance by calling it revolutionary potential. Conclusion: this ideology is civilizational suicide, gift-wrapped as liberation. The premises are empirical, the logic is valid, the conclusion is inescapable. It is not coincidence that every nation that has adopted these premises has seen its birth rate plummet below replacement, its marriage rate collapse, and its men withdraw from the very institutions that sustain it. The loudest voices commanding you to spit out the poison are almost without exception single, childless, medicated, and in therapy for the void that their own ideology has created. The revolution does not produce human flourishing. It produces human wreckage and then demands you call the wreckage freedom. So here's what I want you to do with this knowledge you have earned by reading this far. Go to your bathroom. Pick up your toothbrush, the very instrument the writer called a tool of colonial oppression, and brush your teeth with the precision of a Roman centurion polishing the armor he will wear into battle. Feel the clean. Recognize it as maintenance of the temple. Your body is not a machine yielding output for a faceless system. It is the vessel of your reason, your discipline, your capacity to build, protect, and endure. Sit on that cushion not as a supplicant, but as a man who has earned the right to rest between campaigns. You have been lied to systematically, deliberately, by an ideology that profits from your guilt and your confusion. You have now seen the architecture of the lie, the semantic inflation, the stolen concepts, the Moat and Bailey, the gamma bias, the weaponized compassion, the victim hierarchy that dispenses moral credit based on identity rather than conduct. You cannot unsee it. That is not a curse, that is your emancipation. You have been given the antibodies. Walk out of here with your spine straight and your mind clear, and inoculate every man you know. And now the sponsored book introduction, Marianismo, A Vocation of Devotion. Men aren't born, they're forged. I learned this the hard way after losing my home, my kids, and half my income to a divorce court that treated me like a criminal for wanting to provide. The system didn't care that I worked 80-hour weeks. It didn't care that I stayed faithful. All it saw was a wallet with legs. That's when I stopped believing in equality and started digging what I found. A war on manhood so vicious, so coordinated, it makes the Spanish Inquisition look like a bake sale. This book isn't for the faint of heart. If you're content being a soy-sipping porn zombie cuck who apologizes for existing, close this now and go knit a uterus-shaped pillow. But if you're a man who's sick of getting punished for wanting a loyal wife, disciplined kids, and a legacy that doesn't involve state-mandated alimony, listen up. I've spent a decade dissecting the lies. From the toxic masculinity scam, spoiler, women still want providers, check OkCupid's data, to the Soviet-style playbook governments use to replace dads with welfare checks. You'll learn how to shield your wealth from divorce predators, why testosterone trumps therapy, and why nations led by girl bosses crumble faster than a gluten-free cookie. Chapters like divorce rape, legalized theft, and the castration curriculum aren't metaphors, they're battle plans. You'll meet guys like John who lost everything to a wife's emotional neglect claim, and others who rebuilt empires by ignoring feminist fairy tales. Science doesn't care about your feelings. Sperm counts have plummeted 59% since 1973. Countries pushing gender-neutral preschools are racing toward demographic collapse. And while blue-haired activists screech about patriarchy, women still swipe right on top 10% earners. This isn't theory, it's survival. Your ancestors didn't cross oceans or conquer frontiers by embracing vulnerability. They led, they protected, they built. So either man up and learn how to dodge the estrogen-laced traps of modernity, or keep slurping kale smoothies while they euthanize your lineage. Your call. The red pill's bitter, but the alternative is extinction. Marianismo, A Vocation of Devotion, written by Conrad Riker. Buy now. Links in description.